Scar versus Shere Khan, which character is the more evil one? And who would win in a physical matchup? We have two apex predators who had a reign of terror over their respective habitats, a terror that was bolstered by much wickedness and evil. Regarding the evil deeds of Scar, there was the successful murder of his brother Mufasa, followed by the attempted but failed killing of Simba. After that, we have his greed and overhunting of the Pride Lands, which resulted in it becoming a barren wasteland, devoid of life. As for Shere Khan, we have the killing of Akela, followed by his determined pursuit of Mowgli through the jungle as he casts a shadow of dread over it. The film makes mention that Shere Khan also hunts for pleasure and kills for power, so perhaps in this regard he's somewhat even with Scar's overhunting. For both Scar and Shere Khan, being the carnivores that they are, it's an inescapable fact that they have to kill for their sustenance. But it's fair to say that any kill that is beyond the scope of carnivorous sustenance can be deemed as evil. Both of them could have survived just fine without the murders that they committed. Regarding Scar's central crime of the murder of Mufasa, we should remember that if Scar had followed the customs laid out in the film and killed Mufasa in an official challenge for the throne, then it wouldn't be as egregious as the path he took. However, Scar chose to do it through devious means, putting Simba's life at risk in the stampede so as to gain a position of advantage over Mufasa. The motivation behind said actions doesn't fare too well either, being driven out of jealousy and a lust for power, combined with a lack of self-awareness in being blinded by pride to believe that he could be a superior king. The loss of life in the Pride Lands, along with the suffering of the remaining lionesses, are all attributed to him, as well as the fact that he deprived a son of his father and mother. As for Shere Khan, his misdeeds can be traced back to his debut encounter with Man in the Cave. We don't know the exact reason why Shere Khan attacked, but it was unlikely for sustenance given that man is a new phenomenon for him, one that he would not immediately perceive as food. Perhaps it was simply out of perceiving man to be a potential threat, especially since he was wielding fire, something that Shere Khan does not yet understand. Following this encounter, Shere Khan has both a fear and a hatred of man, which is naturally passed down to Mowgli, an anomaly in the jungle that sticks out like a sore thumb. The jungle is Shere Khan's domain, and with Mowgli around, that position of power is under increasing threat, one that he attempts to take back by striking first. It's a common trope to fear what we don't understand, and this is one of Shere Khan's key drivers. So while his attempt on Mowgli can't be commended, man doesn't belong in the jungle, and it's ultimately an attempt to preserve his long-term survival and his position at the apex of the food chain. But that said, you would think that if Mowgli had left the jungle, then Shere Khan would be back to his normal self. But we find that not to be the case, and this reveals Shere Khan's main driver to be that of vicarious revenge. Revenge for the humiliation he suffered in his encounter with man, an encounter that left him with a permanent reminder that perhaps for the first time he had to flee in fear of an adversary. Revenge is not the most honorable of motivators, but I'd say it's less egregious than that of Scar's motivation of envy or greed. It's not ideal, but the concept of an eye for an eye is a knee-jerk response that often has a tendency to play out. A much more reasonable response than Scar's motivation of killing his own flesh and blood out of envy. Of course, there is a slight element of revenge in Scar's motivation as well. Both Shere Khan and Scar believe they have suffered some injustice and are trying to correct it. For Shere Khan, it's the loss of his eye and the humiliation, while for Scar, it's being deprived of the throne. This makes the contrast all the more clear, as it shows that Scar has no actual grievance to hang his hat on. Mufasa did nothing wrong, and by all rules and customs, deserves to be king. So in light of all that, Scar is the clear winner in terms of being the more evil one. But on a physical level, I think we can all agree that Shere Khan would be the victor in a catfight between the two. We have an absolute specimen of a tiger versus a scrawny and unremarkable lion. Unless Scar can somehow exploit Shere Khan's limited scope of vision, I don't see him winning this matchup.